With the recent economic crisis and Obama passing the reform bill, I was reminded of a book that I recently read, Hard Times. I wanted to bring the author back from time, because you know we could do that. So, if you would, please welcome Charles Dickens!
Oh my God!
First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise, sir.
Now, before we begin with your book, let's start with your personal life. You were born in Langford, England, 1812, and at a very early age, you were put in debtor's prison.
Yes, at the age of 10, I was working in a factory putting labels on bottles. You know, the factory life really changed me. It gave me much perspective on life.
It inspired your book, right?
Exactly, yes. So...
Well, nowadays, there's child labor laws, which is interesting because there were none, from what I understand back then.
Exactly.
Nowadays, our children have equal education. Both rich and poor go to school. However, when you wrote in the 1800s, it wasn't like that. Only the rich went to school.
Yes, the poor, like me, worked in factories. It's very hard for us.
And so you developed characters, Mr. Bounderby and Mr. Gradgrind, who were rich. Mr. Gradgrind was a teacher. You also developed characters such as Sissy Jupe. She was a poor child, but because of her father's wishes, she was allowed education. How was the interaction between those characters?
Well, Mr. Bounderby and Mr. Gradgrind were very rich, very snobby. So, they grew up on facts. Most people, rich people today, only go for facts. No theories, no creativity. So, when Sissy Jupe tried to be creative, they beat her down. Rich people are very selfish, as they are very much today. Yes. So Mr. Gradgrind felt very sorry for Sissy Jupe and her poor background. So he decided to take pity on her and take her in for a new re-education. Instead of fancy, he only taught her facts.
And we now pause for a commercial break.
Do you have no fire in your life? Is your imagination totally cold and empty? Well, maybe you should switch to something else, like Duraflame. It'll light your imagination.
No! Warning, Duraflame is a flammable product that is not intended for kids under the age of 12. Order now while limited supplies last.
Well, thanks to our sponsors, our last studio burned down, so we had to move here. Which reminds me of Coketown. That city is surrounded by ashes, and Coketown represents fact, whereas the circus represented more imagination and intuition. Is that correct?
Yes, the circus, which was, as you know, made up of more the poor type. And so they had to stick together to survive. Now, for example, when Sissy Jupe left, they were heartbroken, but they did want her to succeed. So...
Well, that reminds me of worker unions today we have amongst working people.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, and you, angry audience member in the back.
Yeah, like, what was with that guy, that rich dude, Bounderby? What was with him? I'm sick and tired about hearing about that rich guy's childhood.
Well, Mr. Bounderby was a symbol for social mobilization, how a poor man could become a rich man with ambition.
Well, when we look at the relationship between Bounderby and Gradgrind, we have two rich people, and we see a relationship with really not much in common. It's more of a matter-of-fact relationship.
Well, yes, actually, in fact, they have everything in common. They're rich, they're selfish, but they don't trust each other. It is more of a business relationship, and that's all it is, teaching. But with the circus people, they trust each other. They're a more tighter-knit group. And so, therefore, they're able to trust each other. When, as I said, when Sissy leaves, they're heartbroken.
And we're going to go to a commercial break.
Are you tired of all the injustices in the world? Well, with the new Smokers Take from the Rich, Give to the Poor program, you can do exactly that. And you could be a hero, just like Robin Hood. Smokers. With a name like Smokers, it has to be good.
I've noticed that there is a contrast between the rich and the poor, and in the poor there is physical ailments, such as the man who had asthma, and many of them, their walking is misshapen due to the horseback riding. The rich don't seem to have any physical issues.
Well, the rich do have issues, but I wouldn't say it's very physical. As for Mr. Gradgrind, he's just very misshapen character, but that's natural. As for their misshapenness, it's their character. It's not physical. It's their inside.
Right. Gradgrind, the way he mistreats children, such as girl number 24, or the way he beats down his children when they try to come up in life, and he doesn't let them because it's not fact. And Mr. Bounderby, who he's just very boastful and very self-centered.
Exactly.
Well, I am ninja, he's ninja, she is ninja too. I am ninja, we are ninja, but I believe that you are ninja.
We have a special guest on our show today. It's the Ask a Ninja Ninja. He wants to give his own review on the book Hard Times.
Okay, so personally, I thought the book sucked. Charles Dickens thinks what he knows about hard times, he couldn't be further from the truth. Us ninjas have it way harder. Like at the age of 3, I had to run across water. In boots. And yeah, ninja prom, not very exciting. Very difficult. For my tuxedo, I couldn't just go to a ninja mart. I had to go into a dragon's lair and slay the dragon. And then once the blood was pouring out of the dragon, I had to pour it all over the tuxedo just so the black could soothe in. And quick decisions, yeah. Mr. Dickinson, no tough decisions. When you're fighting a cyclops, you have to make some quick decisions about where to hit it. I mean, the eye is more right on. But no. Ninjas have it way harder. So anyway, Mr. Dickens, you got it all wrong. I look forward to killing you soon.
Well, Mr. Dickens, it was a pleasure to get to meet you, and I really enjoyed our conversation, especially the one about the rich and the poor of your book, From Hard Times. But unfortunately, Mr. Dickens, you've been alive too long. It's time for you to go. Before we begin with your book, I'd like to start with your personal life. You were born in 1812, and you were pretty much immediately put in debtor's prison.
Well, at the age of 10, I was moved to debtor's prison. I worked in a factory and I made Coke bottles. Yes, I
You
did.
didn't. You
Hence
put
the name
labels.
Coke Town.
You put the labels on the effing bottles. There was no Coke involved.
Before we get on to your book, I'd like to begin with your personal... Damn it!
T-Rex!
How do you think that the children nowadays relate to you? Screw that up.
Holy
I was moved to a factory where I put labels on bottles. The labeling process.
It's a pleasure day. First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Shame.
Now,
Come on. Working in the factories gave me inspiration for many of the novels and poems I wrote. Keep going.
Alright, I'm kidding.
Toby, I love you.
Oh, I love life.
Did you talk about myself, son?
What?
First off, I was born in 1812 in a debtor's prison. Wow! Yes! Were you raped 25 times? Wow! Well, Mr. Bounderby, I can't see.
Wow.
I couldn't see the